Alright, so another really great topic for you guys here with comparative advantage. So I've heard many times before, we got to start the year out strong, and from what I've heard from my students in the past, comparative advantage is definitely one of the trickier subjects. Um, Honestly, it's not too terribly bad, but it is a lot of looking at numbers and stuff like that. It's not gonna be any big numbers, don't worry about that. It's like simple fractions, like 4 over 8 being a half or something along those lines, but you guys can do it. I know you can. So I'm going to introduce you to two guys here. We have Ricky Ricardo, Lucy's Cuban-American husband, drumming on the bongo, and David Ricardo, an English economist, that's responsible for coming up with this idea of comparative advantage and it being the whole philosophy behind trade and why trade happens. They're not related whatsoever. Now, absolute advantage versus comparative advantage. There's going to be two kinds of advantage that individuals or economies might end up having. And this is really going to end up dictating why countries trade the way they do. So absolute advantage is the most obvious kind. So it exists when a person or country or whoever it might be can produce more of a certain good or service than somebody else in the same amount of time. So, if you're sitting next to your friend and your friend can produce 6 cheeseburgers an hour while you can only produce 3, who is it that has the absolute advantage? That's right, it is your friend that is producing the 6 cheeseburgers. Now, comparative advantage, though, is going to exist when an individual or a country can produce a good and service at a lower opportunity cost than another individual or nation, meaning that they're giving up less to make something else, right? So going back to our example here before we get one on the screen, remember your friend's making 6 cheeseburgers and you're making 3. Now, if instead of making those 6 cheeseburgers, your friend could have made, all right, they could have made 6 hamburgers, all right? So they could either make 6 hamburgers or 6 cheeseburgers. But you, however, you either make 3 cheeseburgers or 1 hamburger. Who is it that gives up less to make the cheeseburgers, right? So your friend is giving up 1 hamburger for every cheeseburger, whereas you're only giving up 1/3 of a hamburger to make a cheeseburger. Therefore, you are comparatively advantaged in making said cheeseburgers. Now, let's see if we can get some examples here on the screen. Now, specialization, we got a pit stop. Now, individuals and countries can be made better off if they produce what they have a comparative advantage in and then trade other countries for what they need. So what this is to say then is that if, with our example continuing, if your friend starts specializing in making hamburgers and you start specializing in making cheeseburgers, overall, you can do that, and you'll only make cheeseburgers, they'll only make hamburgers, and you guys will end up both being happier than you would have before because overall you can start consuming more hamburgers and cheeseburgers because of that. So it allows people to trade for what they need. So assume David and Ricky Ricardo they're going to throw a party in exactly 1 hour. They decide on serving homemade pizzas and cakes. Assume they have 15 ovens in their apartment and lots of pots and pans. Use the information in the next slide to determine who should produce what. So again, there's a lot of extra information here, but remember, even if it didn't include the 15 ovens and pots and pans and all that, we're assuming that they, have the capabilities of making all of the stuff we're about to see. So here's their advantages here. So David Ricardo, as far as baking cakes, he can make 2 cakes an hour, and he can also make 6 pizzas an hour, whereas Ricky Ricardo can make 4 cakes an hour and 8 pizzas an hour. So let me see exactly how this is going to go. Yeah, okay. So who has the absolute advantage in baking cakes? So who is it in the space of an hour that can produce more cakes no matter what? That's right, it's Ricky Ricardo, because he can make 4 cakes, whereas David Ricardo can only make 2 cakes. Now, who has the absolute advantage in making pizza? Again, you're right, it's Ricky Ricardo. He can make 8 pizzas, while David can only make 6. Running out of water. So, Ricky Ricardo then has the absolute advantage in making both cakes and pizzas, making him better at them. Absolutely. Now, the question then is where it's always going to end up coming in, is going to be with comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is the much trickier side of this. So who is it then that has comparative advantage in baking cakes? All right, so we need to see who gives up less to end up making these cakes. So this is where it gets tricky, especially given our medium. I don't really have a whiteboard to write on, but I'll talk through this problem here as we do it. So who has the comparative advantage in making cakes? So David Ricardo then, on one side of this, he makes 2 cakes an hour. But problem is that there are 6 pizzas an hour that he could be making instead. So how many pizzas is he giving up per cake? So if it's pizzas that he's giving up per cake, you would do 6, divide that by 2, and that means that he is giving up 3 pizzas per 1 cake, meaning that David Ricardo's opportunity cost for 1 cake is 3 pizzas. So for 1 cake equals 3 pizzas. Now Ricky Ricardo, on the other hand, what is his opportunity cost, right? How many pizzas does he give up per cake? And we'll do the same thing here. We'll divide 8 by 4, giving us 2. That's right. Meaning that Ricky's opportunity cost then for making cakes is going to be 1 cake. For every 1 cake, he has to give up 2 pizzas, right? Because again, 8 divided by 4, and that. So David's opportunity cost for 1 cake is 3 pizzas, whereas Ricky's opportunity cost for 1 cake is 2 pizzas. So who has the lower opportunity cost? That's right, it's Ricky Ricardo, meaning that for comparative advantage in baking cakes, Ricky Ricardo has it. So Ricky will be our one for cakes. Now, they can't end up having comparative advantage in both things, so it will be David, but let's go ahead and walk through it. So now on the other side of this problem, how much is it that David is giving up to make one pizza, right? How many cakes does he have to give up per pizza? Right, so 1 pizza, the opportunity cost will be 2 divided by 3 2 divided by 6 this time, giving us 1/3. So 1 pizza for David is 1/3 of a cake, whereas for Ricky, be the 4 divided by 8 instead of 8 divided by 4. And 4 divided by 8 is what? It's a half, meaning that 1 pizza, for every 1 pizza Ricky makes, he needs to give up 1/2 of a cake. So which number is higher, 1/3 or 1/2? 1/2 is higher, right? So who has the lower opportunity cost? That's right, it's David. So David then has the comparative advantage then in making the pizza. Look, there you go. See, you got Ricky over here with the cake, like we said, and then David over here with the pizza, as we said. So again, and the reason is because they give up less to make those. Ricky is giving up less pizzas per cake, whereas David is giving up less cakes per pizza. And it's talking through that down here. All right, so that's comparative advantage. Again, pretty tricky. I'll try to get you guys some more practice problems with this because it's one that you got to really drill into your head. So should be good.